Pow, pow, pow. All right. Freedom Phil, like, subscribe. What are we talking about today? People talk about, men going out and doing their own thing, going their own way. Like guys are basically not fulfilling the so-called traditional roles. And I think the difference is that there used to be other things that men got from relationships other than just box, some pussy. And women still act like, that's all they really got to bring to the table. So anything else they do, they act like they're superwoman. But I'm here to tell you, as guys have kind of wised up, and not to say it's all about the internet, but yeah, men are hearing stories from other dudes, and they're also correlating like, wait, I saw this behavior here and there. So we're living in a whole new world, and I'm not the first to bring this up. Thinking Apes brought it up, Aaron Clary, a lot of other people brought it up, but where am I going with this? Yeah, it's Freedom Phil, like, subscribe, let's get into it. Hey, turn up the video speed. Why do I always say that? Because, hey, watch videos faster. If I choose to upload this, watch it at 1.75. And, as always, not a channel for children. I talk about adult things, although this isn't really like a super weird negative topic. But yeah, I'm not your digital nanny. I'm not here to babysit you. So if you're offended what your kids regurgitate, then try being a good parent, know what your kids are watching. And as always, a lot of my followers, there's a small amount of them, like less than 5%, that are actually probably thinking individuals. The rest of them are like robots and retards. So if you show up here with the da stuff, I'll happily like put you in timeout or just get rid of you. I'll at least call you a retard. All right, let's get into it. I was sitting there thinking about this, and the example like Clary said that I thought was pretty spot on is the idea of referring to men not as people but as robots. And then it goes even beyond that. Like, okay, the base form that you're expected to be is producing, doing something, And the thing about that is that when you really think about it, it takes away all the humanity. Like, you're not a human being as a man, you're a human doing. A woman's allowed to be a human being. And then all the things a guy's supposed to do is all the catering around her feelings, her this, her that, her whatever problem she has is now your problem because you're with her. And the reality is, it's like what Bill Burr said. The only reason we put up with this level of crap is because, frankly, we want to get laid. Now, people would say, is that the number one thing on a guy's mind? Generally, yeah. But there are a lot of other things that would be nice. We look back at previous generations when life was harder and there was no social services, no welfare, no, free money from the internet, no easy ride, no, selectively getting hired just because, hey, diversity quotas, gender quotas, blah, blah, blah. We look back and we're like, oh, hey, they used to cook, clean. And by the way, one thing I think is funny about the ladies, when they say, oh, I cook and clean, it's like, okay, honey, you do that for your own house, right? You do, it's like, it'd be like, you expect me to flush the toilet? Well, why wouldn't you? Didn't you do this before we got together? Like, didn't you do any effort to clean your house before we got together? And if not, okay, well, that says a lot about you. Like, by the way, at that point, literally, there's some of these women out there, if I'm being honest, all they bring to the table these days is a box. They look good. And some of them will put the effort into looking good, or they're just lucky that because they're young. They just got that, youth that basically consumes the weight. But you see this type of situation, and it's funny when you see the general media and whatnot. And they're always trying to, like, why aren't men doing this? Why aren't men doing that? And the line you hear every fucking time is women most affected. Has it ever occurred to you that, yes, men aren't doing things because, well, most of what we did, we really didn't have to do. We did it for other people. And then you see the examples of like good, hardworking men, for instance, they go out there and they're, doing this for their family, this for their kids, make sure there's a house and they're all this crap. And the guy's treated like, worse than Al Bundy. Like Al Bundy at least had some prideful moments occasionally. And, of different era, I know it was a TV show, but they didn't just get divorced. Now the idea of breaking up and divorcing is so casual because there's a payout for it for a lot of women. So as long as you are the useful version, whatever she wants, whether it's the physical genetics or the job, beta bucks, alpha fucks, or maybe you're the full package. But believe you me, even the guy that's the full package, eventually the wife will start nagging and shit testing. I think what a lot of people haven't figured out is that, yes, men want more than just one thing. The reality is, for years, how many guys that had standards, like, and here's the problem. It's like the chain is only as strong as the weakest link in the chain. And a lot of people just don't want to admit that. If you have standards as a man, you can say no and be like, I'm not tolerating this. Like, let's say she's flirting with your friends and you're like, no, I'm not having that, you know? And then you're trying to be controlling. And I love what Tom Leykis said years ago. No, I'm not trying to control you. I'm telling you what I will tolerate in my life. I have my standards. You have your standards. If you want to be with me, you got to uphold to this. Women say that all the time to guys. When guys say that, somehow they're controlling. And what I'm getting at with that is that this society does not view you. You're not supposed to have standards. You're just supposed to tolerate and deal with and, work and pay for things. That's the attitude people have. Men are not treated as human beings. They are humans doing. You are a man bot. And as little as you can put in, I guess that's the part that a lot of guys out there have gotten sick of. As little as is necessary to put into these men, that is the attitude society has. Now, what happens when you have individuals like myself that are like, look, man, I can work 1 year driving truck and go to a farm town, pay cash for a house. I can go out and I can live for $200 to $300 a month. I have next to no bills. Like, obviously, my van life out here, I had the best hike the other day. Hell, I even saw a San Joaquin fox last night. It was incredible. I was like, and there's a new one. It's not like the other one over on the other part of the waste, which I was like, man, this is cool. I'm guessing that fox followed my scent back. Not my scent, but my dog, kind of leaving little tags. Calling cards, as I like to call it, when they here's a bush, leak on that. Here's a rock, leak on that. But yeah, man, when you realize just how little it takes to get by and your whole life, and this is where I think it was Thinking Ape cued it first ages ago when he said, there is no more red pill rage. Why? Because that which previous generations had to look and think and have conversations about and analyze data, and now it's common knowledge. It's all out there. It's kind of like things in computing and gaming and whatnot. That which was once complicated is now common knowledge. It's once upon a time, nobody had the wheel. Now people change a tire like it ain't shit. And I think that's one of the things that's different. And to say there's not an after effect of like guys waking up and looking back and saying, okay, well, all the people that told me be a good person, do this, hard work, all that. And by the way, if you want to talk about something else that's a red pill in a lot of young men these days, like there's no rage. They're taking a look at the corruption in our country. They're looking over at like this case, and I'm not trying to rag on the Somalis, but you guys are right now the Michael Jordans of corruption, right? And we're going to find out a lot of other people are doing this all over the country. Meanwhile, everybody's telling you, be a good robot. Go to work. Pay taxes. Provide for your family. How many times have you seen a guy, a good man, who goes out and works, and his kids will disrespect him? His wife is just kind of a nag and a problem. He doesn't come home to a castle. He doesn't come home to a place of peace. He comes home to a bunch of even more problems. He just dealt with a bunch of problems. I see men out there, even though they love their families, they're quite literally working a job at times because it's an escape from their home. Now, how many of these young boys saw their father, their uncle, some relative of theirs putting up with that shit? And they just, like, that was part of the reason I never got married. I said, not me. And not to mention, I'm kind of an ogre. I'm like a large, lumbering man. I'm not what society's looking for. I could just do the math, do the statistics, and say, it's likely it's not going to work out. And partially because I'm not going to become a simp for a bunch of other people's problems. Now, I was in the early generation, kind of a prototype MGTOW. These younger men, they don't claim the name, but they're going monk mode without even thinking about it. They're just looking at, they're doing the math, and they're saying, what is my life worth? And also, we got to throw into the situation, you had an education system that for 13 years did not prepare these men to have any real job, any real training, any real future. And then you throw them out there and you say, well, hey, go to a trade school. And that's not a bad option, but let's be real about it. Why didn't they get that trade school education in high school? Start off teaching them some of this stuff in middle school. So you tell them to go to university and say, well, here's the price tag. And then you set up a system with a bunch of HR Karens out there that basically make it to where that young man, like, he shows up and they're judging him not based on what he actually, his skills. They're judging him, what clothes was he wearing? How did this woman, this HR Karen, feel about that young man with the skills, with the talent? I can't name the number of times that me, like back when I was full OTR for 9 years or so, driving Class A all over the world, or I should say all over the country. Companies would wash and kiss my feet. I've been out of the game for a while now. Come April, it'll be 4 years. I'm looking forward to going back. And last summer, when I went out and applied for a job, I was dealing with HR Karens. And all because I don't have any recent experience. Like OTR really changed. The only thing that changed is now everything's automatic. It's even easier. So they make me jump through those hoops. Now I got to think these young men out there, the fresh meat. It's kind of crazy. I'll have to go back to being fresh meat again for at least 6 months to a year. What is the message? What is the incentive for these young men to go out there and be, that mover and a shaker in a society that treats you like worse than a robot? Like, man bot, do this. They treat you like a fucking oil filter. You got HR Karens basically making it a pain in the ass for these young men to get jobs. They have fake hiring things, and whether it's trucking or computers or whatever, they're all hiring. They all have hiring posts, but they're just taking up, applications so they can replace you. I don't expect, and by the way, you should never expect loyalty from any company unless you own it. You should always, this is why I always tell young bucks out there, you should be doing the minimalist thing. Live as cheap as possible, invest when you're young, and if you want to buy a house, they're the Midwest, the South, Texas. There's also, you get online, you can find cheap property all over America. If you really want to go the super minimalistic route, get a cheap piece of land and just have an RV. Just make sure that the local state and county regulations will allow you to do it. And then you're out of the game. You're out of the game with a house. Retired by the age of 30. Now, we go back and say male-female relations. If you have actually applied yourself and become the greater, stronger man, why the hell would you risk all that shit for a piece of ass? I'm sorry, but ladies, when we look at you and you put on this nice disguise, you cook and you clean, you act like a lady in the early parts of the relationship. But how many guys have we seen where it's like, now that they're married, it's like signing a car, buying a used car. Oh, turns out there were some problems that the dealer didn't tell you. How much of a relationship is like a used car salesman? Seeing if they can convince you to buy the contract. And then if you screw up as a man, where's your protection? Like, well, you just get a prenup. Any fool that tells you a prenup protects you has never looked into the court cases where prenups were thrown out by judges based on the emotional feeling of that judge. Sometimes I hear people putting their assets in the trust of mom. Trust of the mom of the family, because you got a good, strong family. And if you got a strong family, that might be a thing. I've known guys that have done that. So when like a divorce would happen, they're like, what do you get? Well, hey, take your stuff. I take my stuff. Do you want to take my trailer? That was one of my buddies. And she's like, no. And she was pissed because she thought she was going to get his land. Why? Because the family was smart. Their parents had seen that happen to other families. So, okay, kids, this is how it's going to roll. But think about it. It's a society where if you are a hardworking, successful man, you are risking let's be honest, everything. And they say, well, money isn't it? Bull fucking shit. Like, you don't need a lot of money to survive, but man, it sure is a motherfucker when you put all that effort in your youth to pay something off. Like, I got a house outright paid off up north. Did a remodel. I put 80 grand in it. A lot of work, a lot of time. I would never do it again. Why? Because the society is not responsible enough. But you do a house, you get some land, you get some investments. And you think to yourself, they say, well, it's only money. Yeah, but that was your life you gave away to get that stuff. That was that money that could have been taking care of you in old age. You understand that? And that is what a lot of young men are evaluating, because they have been treated like robots. And some of us, as ogres like myself, like Shrek-like individuals, big nasty ogre, we have made the distinction in our life. We have looked around and said, you know what? It is just, the juice is not worth the squeeze, as Barbarossa said ages ago. It's just not worth it. And so, as my generation had to figure a lot of this out, the young bucks don't have to. All of it's on the internet. And a lot of it's going beyond the internet. It's now becoming common knowledge in the mind. So this whole thing of like marriage and, going out and working yourself into an early grave, you're not going to see guys doing that as much. And the only thing that can change that, by the way, is how women conduct themselves, how women hold women accountable. That's it right there. Men cannot change the culture of women. We can walk away and that can adjust women, but only women can ultimately be the arbiters of what they decide to be. Unless we decide to go like all primitive, like, the country collapses and then it'll go right back to like the Talachad type of thing. At that point, after a collapse, then all the fake ass bullshit's gone. But in a modern, comfortable society, which I would prefer to live in, thank you very much. They're like, you live in a van a lot of the time, because I love living in a van. I love being in the waste. It's like last night I saw San Joaquin. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm happy I saw one. It's like a blessing. I love living in a modern society where I can go to the store and buy parts, buy stuff. So the only thing that can fix the male-female relationships is, one, men not tolerating it and walking away. Just saying no and be like, because either that or you're just working to basically be a slave. And the other part is women as a collective, women starting to hold women accountable. Like women used to do. Old women told young women the game. Young women said, we know more. And every generation, they screwed it up more and more. Me, me, me. And you could try to blame feminism. You can try to blame, society, capital. You blame whatever the fuck you want. But that's like somebody smoking crack in the ghetto. See, the CIA brought the crack. Yeah, but who put it through the lips? Individual choices and actions. Now, maybe that's too male for people. That's male logic right there. But yeah, you are the one responsible. Maybe that's because as a man, you will be held responsible. And that's where you see an individual like myself, where I'm a minimalist and I just kind of do what I do, live off $200 to $300 a month in the waste, in the woods, or wherever I happen to be. I can work very little. I could literally just bum enough change in a day to live for an entire month. You understand that? My contribution to society was a lot when I was producer. My contribution now is basically like, fuck it. Like, it's nothing. So if you don't want to see society go down the fucking toilet, then women got to start bringing something more to a man's table. And there's got to be some security. There's got to be some in-law protections. Like, hey, we should have, at the least, at the birth of every child, we should know paternity test. Is this our child? I think I'm going to say, like, if guys were given the option to abort the child or, a financial abortion, a lot of guys would just fucking walk. And by the way, maybe that's where you need a parental contract. Where basically, you want to have a kid with this guy, you got to set up a contract. And there will be a paternity check at the birth of the child as well. So that way he doesn't say, oh yeah, baby, I'll do it all for you, and then walk away. And by the way, ladies, every woman that said he was different or he said this, understand, old women would have told you what's up. They would have been like, you traded your pussy for words? See, the smart women out there understand no hymen, no diamond. The offended people be like, I can't believe you said that. What? Let's be real about it. The smart women understand no hymen, no diamond. The smart women are well put together. They're not nags. They don't bring a bunch of problems to their man. Women used to keep some of their stuff to the women, and men would keep some of their stuff to the men. I don't know why, like, we've gone to this blasé, we got to mix it all together nonsense. Yeah, there's pillow talk and all that shit, but like, literally, after a guy gets done working anywhere from 40 to 60 hours a week, honey, he really does not need you bringing in your girlfriend fucking problems. We don't need to know about You know, oh my God, the drama from this or that. Oh my God, that bitch at work, blah, 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 blah. We don't need to fucking know that. And if you have a man that's kind enough to listen to your bullshit on that, I understand you got a good man, but the problem is now all guys have to be this weakened version of it. And one thing, I'll just finish with this. The religious chicks that use Jesus as a weapon, you know, they get married and then they basically don't want to put out. I think Cleary's writing a book called I Don't Want to Have a Threesome with Jesus. And for people that don't understand that, it's the idea that basically you force your husband to sit in the cuck chair and then use Jesus like, oh yeah, Jesus, no God, you nasty, you want sex? Like you got married, you did the right thing, and then you don't even sleep with your husband? And these women will be like, why aren't guys getting married? Why aren't they committing? Why the fuck will we commit? There's a bunch of bitches that throw their pussies around. And there's a bunch of women that are married that don't fuck their husbands. I gotta wonder how often in society, how much more could get done if you sent that soldier off to war every day when he's gonna go to work, with a smile on his face versus a grimace. How much better would the world be? Stop treating men like robots. They're people. And you got to give them more than just pussy. You know? But it's the factor that, like I said earlier, we render down men's desires and wants down to a few simple things. And they're like, well, I want a home, you know, I want this, I want to get laid. That's probably the number one. And, you know, I don't want no drama. That we have been rendered down to have such low expectations of our relationships. And that is why guys like myself, when we walk away, we're not lonely, we're happy. And more guys are walking away. There's young dudes that ain't even putting up with the bullshit game. Like, I gotta be real about it. The old days, you just go and ask this girl out and blah, blah, blah. Some guys are still doing that. But you shoot down a good man enough times and eventually he's just like, man, this game ain't even worth playing. And you see the women, they're all going after like the top, you know, like I think dating apps are probably one of the worst things that happened to men and women in the sense that it shows a lot of men that, yes, they are just fucking the upper 20%. They'd like to get with the upper 5%. And by the way, that used to go on in a lot of small towns and big cities everywhere where there's a handful of guys that are, you know, the studs. They're the hunks. You gotta wonder how many of these kids in these cities are literally some other dude's kid. And she's just like, it's yours. Women have always done that, but now it's out in the open. And that's like I said, man. When guys start seeing the game for what it is, the internet has changed everything. The idea that the knowledge that we didn't once have, like, it's like the idea of how reading changed the world. For those that don't understand what I mean by that. Initially, it was people trying to decide, and we want to read the Bible ourselves. We shouldn't be beholden to the Catholic Church. And then the printing press comes along, and it wasn't just Bibles. It was all sorts of literature, and reading changed the fucking world. The access to knowledge and how things work and understanding literature gave people philosophy. It gave people a new understanding of the world. In the same way that the internet, when it comes to a lot of men's issues, that which the generations before, we watched the boomers did the gold champions of the divorce Olympics. And then Gen X pretty much followed the leader, and millennials pretty much, now Zoomers are looking around and they're like, how about not me? They got enough evidence, they can see enough statistics, just like with the writing, man. Once books were around, then the one guy that was the genius in a village, some obscure village or kingdom, actually left the knowledge for the next generations. And they could, with the printing press, they could mass produce that information. So you could go to a library and read the thoughts of someone who lived before you. Now with the internet, people can compare and contrast and be like, yeah, man, I'm just not putting up with this. They're seeing the court case. Just like when you see some of those police brutality videos or police misconduct videos. And, you know, like the scales are off your eyes, man. You're like, this is what really happened. There's no hiding anymore. And that's why, as where there might have been red pill rage in the back in the day, because people were pissed off that they were lied to. Just do the right thing, be a hardworking man in a society, by the way, that charges you how much to get that education. how much for a car, how much for life, how much for a house, and then backstabs you horrifically in divorce court. I never got married because I saw that happen to a lot of guys. These guys have all the information. So they're not even angry. Some of them, they're not going to do much with their lives. Others, on the other hand, what they are going to do is they're not going to waste their life. They're going to go out and live and be. To some degree, that's what I'm doing. 4 years ago, come April, when I stopped driving truck, partially it was because I was early 40s and I thought to myself, I'm not old, but I'm also not young anymore. 40 sounds young if you're 70. Let me tell you something. 40 is a good age to go out, go hiking. But you know what? 20 was a good age for it too. So was 30. Part of the reason I often tell a lot of you young bucks out there, retirement by the age of 30, and I'm not kidding when I say that. Basically go out, get a job, live as cheap as possible, get yourself a trade as young as possible. I did trucking for a while. Trucking won't be around forever, but it's still around. 3 weeks worth of training, 3 weeks worth of driver training, and you're off to the races. It's a free apartment on wheels. Any way you can live cheaper, you take that money, you invest when you're young. And basically, when you want to get a piece of land or a house, lots of cheap houses all over the Midwest, you just go on Google Maps, look up a town, look up the cost of living, look up the cost of a house, check out the crime statistics, the demographics. Yeah, you can be retired by the age of 30 in America as an American. Now, the only thing that will hold you back is yourself, your desires. Generally pussy. That's why if you decide you don't want kids, be smart about it. Get a vasectomy. That's $700 I ever spent. All juice, no seeds. But if you get out of this game early when you're young, and by the way, that's the one that pisses a lot of the fraggy-vaggy socialist off. You can't be retired in America by 30. What the fuck are you doing? You got a nice house. You got a nice house, but you ain't got nothing else but the house and some bills and work. By the way, that always does piss people off. And the reason it pisses people off is because the older people get mad. Because what I'm telling them makes them realize they wasted their fucking life. So the thing about the old people is that they will try to sink your life to justify why their life wasn't wasted, like an old feminist that wants to see the next generation do the same stupid shit. What I just told you is the quickest way for you to win. Live as cheap as possible, minimalist, invest when you're young, live off the dividends. If you choose not to do that, it's not that you can't do it. If you choose not to do that and you want to waste your life, fine, it's your life to waste. And I know this offends a lot of people, but when you get down to it, if you're going to do the hero's journey and you're actually successful, why the hell would you piss that away with potentially losing more than half? Because you did more of the work. You did the majority of the hard-ass work. So you're losing probably 75% or more of your assets, considering it was your life that was pretty much sacrificed. Why the hell would a young man do that? You should treat yourself. If you expect to be treated in a humane way, you should at least respect yourself enough as a human not to allow yourself to be treated like a robot. So like I said earlier, these younger men, that there is no red pill rage anymore. There's knowledge, strategy, and they're out there living their lives. And there's an irony to all of this, just as a closing thought. Women's liberation was ultimately men's liberation, because now we're not responsible for you. You're not our responsibility. And I think women are starting to figure that out. And the irony is they're still just using the same playbook. It's the same fucking playbook. We've moved on. They're standing there in the dust wondering what the fuck's going on. Peace. Take it easy.